Experimental research methods are very different from correlational research methods. If you'll recall, correlational methods mean that you go out there in the world and measure variables as they are. You don't actively manipulate anything, you don't change anything. But in an experiment, you actually manipulate a variable to see if it has an effect on another variable. In other words, you change the situation in the world in some way to see what effect it has. So when you manipulate a variable, that variable is called the independent variable. And then the variable that you measure to see if it was affected is called the dependent variable, because presumably it depends upon what you've done with the other variable. So let's use an example. Let's stick with the same one we used last time. If we were interested in the difference between people who drink a lot and people who don't drink a lot of alcohol to see if their GPAs are differently. Now, in the correlational study we described in the last set of slides, we simply went out there and measured how much people drank and what their GPAs were. But if we wanted to do an experiment, let's say for the next term, we would randomly assign some subjects to be in the high drinking group where they had to drink a fifth of hard liquor per day, and we would have to worry about controlling what time of day they drank it and how quickly they drank it and all of that, but assuming we solved those problems. And then have another group that was not allowed to drink at all for the entire term. And what we would then do is see if those two groups differed in their GPA at the end of the term. Now, I used a term that's very important, and that term is random assignment. If we're going to have two groups in our experiment, we have to make sure that those groups are as similar to each other as possible. And so I couldn't just put all the males in one group and all the females in the other group, because then if I found a difference at the end of the experiment, I wouldn't know if it was a difference between drinking and not drinking, or if it was a difference between males and females. Similarly, I couldn't very well just say, okay, who wants to be in the drinking condition and who wants to be in the non-drinking condition, because the people would separate themselves out into two groups and they would be different from each other in important ways. So I have to make sure that my experiment is free from confounding. Confounding is the word that we use when we inadvertently manipulate something else besides the independent variable and confuse it with the independent variable, so you can't ever really know if any differences you find between the groups are due to the independent variable or to something else. So it's essential that we use random assignment. For each person in the experiment, it was just a matter of pure chance whether they ended up in one group or the other group. Now, are the groups going to be exactly the same in every respect? No. I've done some demonstration in classes where I flip a coin for each student in the room and have all the people who are heads move to one side of the room and all that go to tails, get tails, go on the other side of the room. And then I ask questions like, okay, how many people on this side of the room are left-handed? How many people on that side of the room are left-handed? How many males and females on each side of the room? How many people from Illinois in each group? And so on down the line. And the two groups are usually not exactly the same on each of those variables, but they're pretty close. And the key to random assignment is that any differences between the group are due to chance. And the statistical tests we use to analyze data will make the assumption that any differences that occur to chance can be accounted for. And if we get a big enough difference that it was unlikely due to chance, then we conclude that the independent variable had an effect. Now, don't confuse random assignment with a random sample. My upper-level psych majors often interchange those two terms, and they're very different things. A random sample would mean you went to a population and selected people out in a totally random way, with the hope being that that gives you a sample that reflects the population as a whole. If I were to use you, this term's Psych 100 class, in an experiment, you certainly are not a random sample of anything. You're not a random sample of human beings. You're not a random sample of college students. You're not even a random sample of Knox college students. You signed up for this course on this term, and in some way that makes you different than everybody else. But I could do a perfectly good experiment using you as my subjects by randomly assigning each of you to one condition or another in an experiment. So, random assignment is an essential part of experimentation. Now, you can see on the slide that the validity of experiments is something that experimenters worry about, and there are two kinds: internal validity and external validity. Internal validity means, have you done your experiment properly? Is it free from confounding? Because if it isn't, if there is confounding in your experiment lacks internal validity, and it's pretty much worthless. You can't conclude anything from it. So internal validity is always essential for an experiment. External validity means, can you generalize the results of this study to other people in other places? And external validity is usually something people are interested in, meaning experimenters, because you usually want to understand something about human beings in general, and you want the results of your experiment to generalize. However, sometimes you might be studying something where you're just interested in what could happen with one particular group of people, and you don't really care if it can generalize to other situations. So external validity is usually desirable, but it isn't as essential as internal validity is. And if you don't have internal validity, you can't have external validity. All right, the next thing on the slide, inferential statistics. There has to be a way of deciding whether any difference you find between your groups is big enough to really be meaningful. So in the experiment I proposed about how much you drink and what your GPA is, if at the end of the term we compared the GPAs of the two groups for that term, and we see that one of them has a 3.2 and the other has a 3.1, you would probably say, that's too close for me to conclude that drinking really had any effect on GPA. And if I said 3.2 versus 3.0, you might still be a little uneasy about making that jump. On the other hand, if I would say, okay, the people who drank had a GPA of 2.0 and the people who didn't had a GPA of 3.2, you would probably say, aha, yeah, that's big enough. I know that the drinking had an effect now. Inferential statistics are the things that we use to determine how large of a difference is large enough to matter. So when we talk about a difference being statistically significant, what we're saying is that the statistics we use to analyze the data indicated that the difference we found was unlikely due to chance. Probably our independent variable is the thing that caused the difference. Now, there are some advantages to doing experiments rather than correlational studies. You've got a lot more control over what happens, and the big one is that you can infer cause-effect relationships. If you have done your experiment correctly, you can say with some degree of confidence that a change in the independent variable is the cause of the change in the dependent variable. Because if you recall, in correlational studies, you can't ever draw that cause-effect conclusion. Now, the disadvantages of experiments are that they are often just more of a hassle than correlational studies, so it takes longer, it takes more time, it takes more money, and if you need to collect a lot of data very quickly, they may not be the most efficient way to go. And also, there are simply things that you cannot manipulate. Natural disasters, or there are things you shouldn't manipulate, ethically speaking. So there are some things that experiments just won't allow you to do. This slide presents a list of other research methods that don't fall neatly into the category of experimental methods or correlational methods. Quasi-experimental designs, for example, look a lot like experiments, but they may have some key component, like maybe it wasn't possible to randomly assign people to groups or something of that nature that make them different. And the other things on the list are other important ways of doing research that psychologists use. Your textbook talks about each one of these, and they're all fair game for the quiz, but I'm not going to say too much more about them at this time. I don't have much to add to what the book has to say.